Welcome to Tracy's Terrors. If you love horror and appreciate smart animal commentary, then you're in the right place. Today, Strigoi, VamPullet, and I will be discussing Chronister's 2024 novel, The Bog Wife. Chronister's The Bog Wife is Frankenstein meets We Have Always Lived in the Castle, with a strong warning about environmental degradation. But more than a basic metaphor for the current climate crisis or a retread of old tropes, it is a really well-informed engagement with the Gothic tradition that yields something sophisticated and new. While the Gothic mode has been with us now for over 250 years, some of its key features, specifically its tendency to obscure the past and conceal uncomfortable truths, make it a poor match for the narrative demands of the present moment, a critical point in the history of the planet when we need to honestly acknowledge the unsustainability of our inherited cultural practices and use our creativity to devise less destructive alternatives. Chronister seems to suggest that these urgent needs can't be met by the Gothic, at least not in its traditional form, and The Bog Wife, a novel that is Gothic to its core, demonstrates all the ways in which this mode has outlived its usefulness. So too, it suggests, has folk horror, a much more recent category with which the Gothic overlaps. Focused on the predictable needs of an unchanging landscape, folk horror can't easily accommodate the implications of extreme and erratic weather of the kind that the Hadleys in the novel face. So what's a horror writer who wants to address the most pressing issue of our time supposed to do with these beloved, albeit inapt, forms? I would say exactly what Chronister does. She applies pressure to the conventions until they break. If we imagine the Gothic as a chassis and folk horror as a set of balding tires, Chronister drives this vehicle straight into the ground, leaving her characters stranded, so that the only option for them is to find a new way forward, and it is exciting to accompany them. So let's jump into it with a summary of The Bog Wife. Since time immemorial, the Hadleys of West Virginia have had a compact with the bog. In each generation, the eldest son is the custodian of the bog, and he exchanges the body of his dead father or the patriarch of the family for a bog wife, which is a woman born of decaying vegetable matter with whom he can have children. Daughters are forbidden to marry, and it's through the men's monogamous relationship with these wetland humanoids that the Hadley bloodline stays noble and pure. At least this is the story that the adult Hadley siblings, Etta or Ada, not sure, Charles, Wenna, Nora, and Percy, have always been told by their father. But when the siblings commit the body of their father to the bog, no bog wife emerges for the eldest son, Charles, who's always been viewed as something of a disappointment by the family. So now, with the ancient compact broken and the wetlands drying up and changing, the Hadleys are angry and adrift. And the question of the novel is, should they try to preserve the old ways by forcing the land into some kind of compliance, or should they devise different ways of existing? In a savvy assessment of literary history, Chronister seems to suggest that the Gothic impulse to generate false histories is no longer sustainable in the 21st century. From Horace Walpole's Castle of Otranto, Gothic fiction has always reimagined the past in ways that allow the characters and the readers to confront, escape, or even reconcile their anxieties. And continuing this tradition, the Hadley history speaks to the siblings' deepest fears and desires. But as Chronister shows, in the modern age, it isn't possible for them or for us to permanently suspend disbelief or even to maintain that state for very long. By the third page of the novel, we know that the Hadley compact or history is nothing more than a racist fantasy based on extractive capitalism and exploitation. The problem for the Gothic here is that the truth is so easy, too easy to find. One of the characters has access to the internet, and another, Wenna, has been in the real world for 10 years and undoubtedly has a smartphone. And it's this issue of will, of wanting to know the truth, that's the real crux of this story. The source of drama in the novel isn't the hoax. Chronister doesn't spend much time on how the patriarchs have perpetrated it, nor does she try to build suspense by dragging out its revelation. What she's interested in is what the characters will do once they can no longer plausibly claim ignorance. While Chronister quickly dispatches with the family's impossible origin story, she doesn't go full Radcliffe in her rationalization of all things fantastic. A creature created through an occult bargain between man and nature, the siblings' bog mother is the book's Frankenstein, and like the abject figure of her literary predecessor, she is the other against which the characters define their identities. She's a kind of psychic trash can into which they can jettison unwanted parts of themselves. But while the Bog Wife is a magic mirror reflecting traits that the characters disavow, she's also an agent, very real, very solid, in her own right, who is sent to the Hadleys to speak on behalf of larger natural forces. And it's her diplomatic role that got me thinking about how Chronister's work intervenes in the genre of folk horror, which is at bottom all about the ritualistic ways in which humans bargain and interact with the land in order to appease the powers that live there. Chronister's novel suggests that climate change throws a real wrench into the folk horror formula. In classic instances of the genre like Day of the Arrow from 1964, the locals know with a certainty what the land requires of them. The trick is not deciphering their obligations, but in meeting them to stave off crop blight or some other agricultural catastrophe. However, when the land, which has always seemed predictable and sure, suddenly changes due to extreme shifts in temperature and precipitation, then as the Hadsleys discover, all bets are off, all agreements null and void, or at the very least provisional. Breaking with other works of folk horror, the Bog Wife shows what happens when people and the land just fundamentally are out of sync and misunderstand each other's needs. The novel resolves this confusion in a surprisingly clunky way. Unfortunately for us, the planet isn't going to send a representative to verbalize in the starkest of terms what it is that it really wants. Though we, like the Hadsleys, shouldn't need it to be spelled out because we have had enough clues to guess. When the characters are finally forced to confront the truth of their situation, they cope with it in different ways, and each response suggests a possible route forward for humanity. Undoubtedly, there are many other options available than the sort of depressing ones that the book suggests, but mapping out the future of humanity is well beyond the scope of this or any other novel. What Chronister does is more than enough. The Bog Wife is an urgent reminder, because deep down inside we already know, that we can't absolve ourselves and justify our present actions by mindlessly gesturing towards some romantic past or tradition. And in narrating our way through crisis, we have to reinvent old forms. And the Bog Wife shows that it can be done. We thoroughly enjoyed this book and highly recommend it, 5 stars. Now, if you liked what you heard and saw today and you'd like to see more of the 3 of us, please subscribe to the channel. It would mean a lot. Thanks so much for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.